Funeral services for the victims of the Uvalde school shooting begin today and will continue into next month. The family of one of the teachers killed is also preparing to say goodbye in the coming weeks. Well, CBS News spoke with her sister about their last happy moments together and her push for stricter gun laws. Lilia Luciano joins us now. Lilia, good morning.
Good morning to you, Anne Marie and Vlad. We heard from Maggie Mireles. She's the sister of Eva Mireles, that fourth grade teacher, one of the two to die. She was telling us her sister loves adventure. She was a big hiker, and that she would have never imagined, despite being fearless and brave, that her job would cost her her life.
I wake up every morning and the first thing I do is cry because I know that it's real.
For the family of Eva Mireles, the nightmare continues. Her sister Maggie now facing the most overwhelming of tasks, picking out the last dress she'll ever wear.
That was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life.
Family members briefed by police say Eva and her co-teacher Irma Garcia both died shielding their children from a gunman who stormed into the classroom and opened fire, killing 19 of their students.
I'm sure they didn't even think about what they were doing twice. They just did it.
The dog lover, mother, and wife to a police officer was finishing her 17th year of teaching. She loved doing CrossFit, hiking, and bonding with her loved ones in nature.
This weekend was the absolute best weekend ever.
This is the last photo Maggie has with her sister from a family trip earlier this month. As the shooting unfolded, a family member texted Eva in a group chat asking if she was okay. There was no response.
I just knew that my sister was going to be okay. I never in my dreams thought that my sister was not going to make it. I never thought that.
Maggie is now fighting for gun control. She told us she met Texas Governor Greg Abbott and urged him to tighten regulations.
There's no reason why this type of weapon should be among us. Governor Abbott said that he would be working on laws to change these things, and I expect to see that.
But in the meantime, Eva's family is trying to figure out how to navigate life without her.
I want everybody to remember her name, remember her face, and remember that she was a hero.
Eva Mireles was 44 years old, and she sure will be remembered. She'll be laid to rest a week from Friday after her students' funerals and visitations and burials. We've learned that the Department of Justice has launched a critical review. That's not a criminal investigation. It's a review to learn lessons for the future and really understand what happened. Why did law enforcement wait 75 minutes before getting into that classroom and stopping the shooter? Anne-Marie.
You know, Lilia, it's a lesson that we seem to be unable to learn time and time again. What did Eva's sister tell you? Did she say something else about her meeting with Governor Abbott?
Maggie spoke about that meeting, saying that the governor was very empathetic, that he, bonded and connected with their suffering, and that, she asked the tough questions about what will you do? And he said, I'll do something. In a way, he told her, we're working to do something this summer, not a direct promise to exactly what will change. She did express that she doesn't, as you heard in the story, she doesn't understand how an 18-year-old can purchase an AR-15 style weapon. That was kind of the crux of that conversation with the governor, according to her. And he said something will happen this summer. They're working on it, but we're yet to see exactly what and how things will change.
And now it almost seems like there needs to be parallel investigations based on all the stuff that we found out over the weekend, right? An investigation into the crime, but then an investigation into how law enforcement dealt with it, because it seemed like or didn't. Right? So many balls were dropped. Lilia, what can you tell us about just where the investigation stands?
Yeah, that's why the DOJ got involved at the request of the Uvalde mayor. They're looking at that timeline. I've been talking to local leaders and politicians who say we want to know exactly who was in that building. Was it really just, the local police or the school district police, or were state officials in there too? Were state officers, rather, not officials, state officers in there too? And what that means is, why wouldn't, this Peter Arredondo, who was the person in charge, the commander of the incident, why wouldn't he give up kind of the command of the situation to a department that was better equipped, that had more people? I mean, he was in charge of just 6 officers. Why did he remain in charge? Why was he the one to make the call that, in fact, this had, which in fact it hadn't, that this was no longer an active shooter situation and that now it was a barricaded suspect, meaning that there were no people in that room to save? We've heard from parents who say, I believe my child bled to death. We've heard from a community saying, how come there were, not just the school district police who was in charge of the school, but, local law enforcement from Uvalde, state law enforcement, in terms of Texas Rangers troopers, and then you had the Border Patrol, which finally decided on their own to just, break through and stop this shooter. There's so many questions. Also, what about the 911 call? I keep asking everybody. I've asked DPS. I've asked local authorities. Where did that 911 call go? Why were there 19 officers inside the school already waiting when you had children calling and saying there's at least 8 or 9 people alive in here? So, I think as you said, there's one investigation into the shooter, into any possible motivation, into how he, afforded the ammunition, into why. And of course, even if it's legal, and that's a big question, politically speaking, that people are saying, how come it's legal? But even if it's legal, why didn't that raise any flags? An 18-year-old on his around his 18th birthday, coming in and buying more ammunition than a soldier takes to war, and that doesn't end up as a report to police. All of those questions are still pressing and are the questions that people hear. I mean, they come up to me and they ask for questions, and I'm saying, look, I'm working on it. We're out there investigating, but there's going to be a lot more reporting on this, and authorities, local, state, federal, are going to have to give a lot of answers.
It just boggles the mind, Lilia and Anne-Marie, when you, as we start to review some of the video that is now just coming out that we're starting to see and review as a network, I know on the ground, just if you're a parent to know that your child was alive at one moment while the police were outside milling about deciding what to do, and then in the space that when they did not enter the building, that your child died.
Yeah, yeah.
It boggles my mind.
Because the parents are already going to be tortured about, we've done stories before, we've been talking, and, there are parents that, there's one parent who they were celebrating, I think it was an honor roll day, and the kids sort of said, oh, why don't we go out for breakfast? And they said, no, you have to go back to class. And I can't imagine these parents sort of beating themselves about this. Yeah. The other thing, Lilia, I keep thinking about is, what happens to all this money? Like, law enforcement gets all this money for sort of, SWAT team stuff, and schools get all this money to harden the schools, and yet there's an unlocked door, and the classrooms are unlocked. It just feels like there were failures on so many levels.
Right.
I just can't imagine where this investigation ends,
And to that point, Lilia and Anne-Marie, I will just say that this is why journalism matters, and I'm not trying to make this about reporters, but when the governor gets up there and he provides a narrative and he gives it as the definitive narrative, the fact that we are now learning these details, this is why the press matters, because it would have been very easy for the police to say, here's the timeline, here's what we did, here's what happened, and there you go.
Yeah.
And that's not how it, obviously, that's what they expected to happen. They expected that we would be stenographers for their narrative, and that's not what we do.
And, it's also important to have perspective. Look, I've been covering Texas this year thoroughly, even though the region that I usually cover is the West Coast. Because of that, I've been doing ride-alongs with Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star along the border, where you see the amount of efforts that the state is putting into enforcing immigration, which is not in their jurisdiction. So, when you see that what is in their jurisdiction is to respond, to a school shooting, and we're yet to find out who exactly was in that building at what time, you gotta ask, how are all of these resources being used? Why is $4 billion going to patrol the border, which is not under the jurisdiction of the state, where they still have to call Border Patrol to come in, but under the jurisdiction of, Border Patrol of CBP? When it comes to a school shooting in a community where you have so many agencies responding, and you have parents believing that their children bled to death, as you said, many failures that we are looking into and hoping to continue bringing answers to.
Lilia, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.